Alright. Hello, humans who are on the other side of the screen. Um, these are going to be the reviews for the people who are on Team Night, if I'm remembering that correctly. So this is the replay that was sent to me by STT. I'm assuming that only STT is really going to be watching this, but you never know. Maybe you guys want to check out something particular for your teammates. Also, just a good way to kind of like learn about one another and your play style, and it gives you more game sense and game knowledge if you see something here that you might have not learned in your own review. It can be a good way just to learn about the game holistically. It's fun. It's fun. So I'm gonna start by just nitpicking on the same thing that I always nitpick: the fact that you're not starting on high ground, especially as Winston, is a big thing for me. As Winston, you want to be always positioning on high ground, and Diva too, of course. Whenever you can. The idea is that if you can, you can't actually get to the high ground without using a movement ability, but you can get to the low ground without using a movement ability. So by starting on the high ground, you let your cooldown reset, and then you get to have more options throughout the duration of the fight, because you can drop to low ground without using your jump pack or boosters jets, and then you can jump back to the high ground when you feel like things are getting dicey. But if you start on the low ground and the enemies go to the high ground, you're going to have to use your movement cooldown to get up to them, and then you won't have it to do anything later. So always start on high ground, especially as Winston, but we want to start as high ground as almost everyone. In this situation, you might not want to start as on high ground as like Reinhardt, but so there you get kind of lucky because the enemies aren't able to punish you in time, so you're able to get in and get out. But this is this is like old school dive. Old school dive, you would jump forward into the enemies, land on top of them to get the impact damage, and then your DPS would follow it up. But new school dive is a little bit different. You actually jump to high grounds or like some sort of staging area to the left and to the right of enemies, and you zap them as they pass by, and then you drop onto them once you think that you want to chase and they're low. With your jump always there to be able to like assassinate a target basically, or to jump back to high ground. So we really want to get out of this old school dive mentality. It's very, very basic, very, very punishable, and it's really just bad at this point because there's so many things in the game that blow Winston up. You jump straight into a Junkrat, you got slept by Ana, there's a rock that Sigma could hit on you. It is fortunate here that you don't die, but it's more so the lack of skill from the enemies, the lack of awareness that a Winston jumped into their backline, and their lack of understanding of how to use their abilities that makes it difficult for them to punish you. So it's not that you did a good thing here in staying alive, it's just that the enemies are so bad that you get away with doing a bad thing. That happens a lot, honestly, in lower ranks. You learn a lot of bad habits because, what you call it, your opponents can't do what they should be able to do in order to show you what is the actual truth of the game, right? If you only ever play in low ranks, your idea of Widow is that she's like a really bad hero, because nobody can play Widow well in low ranks. But as soon as you get into high ranks, Widow's actually pretty broken. Like you can single-handedly win every game for your team if you just play Widow to a high level and just click people. No game sense required, no positioning sense required if you just click heads. So there are things that we want to basically be looking at in the game where it's like, okay, we're going to be using our own experiences, and then there's going to be other things in the game that we're going to be looking at where we're going to say, okay, maybe this is just something that only applies to my rank because, people can't do specific things or certain fundamentals don't work, But in terms of a team setting, we're going to want to be looking at kind of like the holistic sense because, what do you call it? We're going to be playing against people who are going to be better. So we're just going to look back at this really quick just to give you kind of an idea. This is another reason why high ground is really good, because in situations like this, the enemies are all playing the low grounds. But if you had been up here, they would have had a very, very hard time pushing into you and dealing damage to you, which meant your supports could have healed you up to full without actually having to worry about you taking a ton of damage and having to mitigate damage while healing you. So it makes it really difficult for your supports when you're just kind of like in these low ground positions, just face taking damage, because as Winston, your only real defensive resource is your bubble, and it's not a super good defensive resource. It's really big, it's really easy to hit, and if they have any sort of shield break, which on this team they do, they have a Junkrat and a Sigma and a charged up Zarya, it's a really easy break. It's 800 health for 12 seconds, which isn't a ton of health to go through in 12 seconds when it comes to a large shield. So you really want to be trying to use map geometry in most instances to kind of like buffer the lack of damage negation you have. And in this case, the high ground would have been the better answer, because you'll notice they keep pushing you as you go back around the corner. And I mean, you should have gone back around this corner and just sat here for a while. That passivity might let them get cart progress, but you're not doing anything by constantly pushing forward. So just staying there would have been good, but you push around this corner again and you get poked down. There's no reason to do that. You just died for no reason. You could have literally just went here and sat here and wait until your supports healed you up. And, you know, touch at the last second regardless of health, because at some point, you know, there comes a point where you want to really like start contesting cart. But the point at which we really care about as defenders, and I'm going to keep saying this, is we care about right before they are able to get more time. So right before they get the next checkpoint, that's what we actually care about. Because if they don't get the next checkpoint, they don't get additional time. And as defenders, you're not fighting to win fights, you're fighting to beat the clock. Because the enemies have a set amount of time where they have to complete their objective, and you can just waste their time. You can win by wasting their time. Alright. I'm actually... Okay, so that was high grounds as Winston. Oh my god, that voice cracked. Jesus Christ. My voice is out of it today. My girlfriend just looked at me and laughed. She's bullying me now. No, but high ground as Winston is going to be super duper important. I want you to get down those fundamentals as Winston. Going to the high ground, dropping to the low ground, jumping back to the high ground. I want that to be your normal rotation. So for Winston, get that down, write that down however you have to. Jump to the high ground, wait for your cooldown, drop to the low ground, zap zap, stall cart, jump back to the high ground, right? The first thing that I want to talk about with Reinhardt is the pins like this, right? So we're going to look at this from an overhead perspective, because I think for you, STT, one of the biggest problems that you have is you don't really understand your team's positioning, especially once you start like moving around. You seem to lose kind of track of what they would be doing, which is fair because you can't necessarily see them, but there's a lot of assumptions that you're going to generally have to make, and there's a lot of indicators you can use to kind of tell what's happening. So, but let's first start with the pin, because the pin is pretty big here, and it's pretty egregious. So I just want to go back a few seconds if I can manage it. And I want to try to get you an overhead perspective. Let's look at it from this way, I guess. You're gonna have to just mind the walls. Just imagine they're not there, you know? Okay, so let's go forward a little bit. Okay, so at this point, you are, and we can move around a little bit, you are protecting your team, right? Shielding your diva, which is good because she's actually, like, she needs shielding right now. And then you back up for some reason, leaving your diva exposed to a Zarya, where she has a mismatch disadvantage. And you continue backing up until you're behind your supports, for some reason. And then you charge forward. Now, what you've essentially done, right, STT, because you understand sports talk, is imagine if this was football, right? Your supports are your quarterback, and maybe your running back or whatever. People who want to be behind the defensive line. They want to be behind you. You are, you know, I can't remember the positions. I don't follow football enough. Shit. This analogy might not work out. No. But you are the, you know, the defensive line that's going to hold for the quarterback. You're going to, you know, hold off the other big men, the other fat guys who are pushing into your fat guys. And you're going to do your best to try to prevent them from getting to your quarterback. Why in the world would that line step behind the quarterback? They have no reason to. And that's essentially what you're doing here. And you might be doing it for the sake of, you know, getting back to kind of like get this charge, but you didn't need to do that. because you step back to try to get a running start at a tackle, and it just doesn't make any sense. You could have just tackled from a short distance. You could have just tackled from right in front of somebody. And then on top of that, you're going for a tackle that takes you way out of the play. Look at the distance now between you and your team. And look at the distance between you and the enemy team. It would take forever for your team to follow up. I have been talking about these pins for weeks. I need you to learn. These long pins are not acceptable. They compromise the team. They are feeding and throwing your games, right? So we need to stop doing these long pins. What the heck? There we go. And we need to start looking for pins that are short distance. And even if you miss them, you can get back to your team very quickly. Okay, part of why you are having trouble with your team knowing where your team is because your teams probably always play a little bit weird. I'm going to tell you right now, your teams probably always play a little bit weird because your positioning sucks. Your positioning is garbage. They don't know where you're trying to go at this point. You have been over here, you have been over here, you have gone over here, you've just walked all around, you're like just kind of doing your own thing, just following your own path. You need to go to set concrete places where you stand and hold. You need to go from one corner to another corner, right? You need to go from cover to cover. You may be a big shieldy boy, but you still need to use cover sometimes, okay? Your team will be able to, when you do these things, when you hold concrete corners and you don't move around so much, when you only move to try to, you know, like pressure an enemy or like chase an advantage or to like create space, your team will start to recognize that. But right now, you're just moving to move. Like, you haven't actually gone... You went forward and didn't do anything with the movement. Like, you just walked forward, took a bunch of shield damage, and then started walking back for no reason. Okay, you know what? I'm not even going to continue past this point. I want you to do two things for me, STT. This is going to be your homework. You know, get it done before next Friday, let's say. I want you to do two things for me. I want you to, one, continue playing Winston and try to build that habit where you're not jumping into people, but you're jumping onto high grounds and stuff like that. You can still jump into people occasionally. They just have to be very isolated, and, you know, you have to be able to confirm that kill. So that's one. I want you to build the muscle memory of jumping to that high ground, getting that rotation that we were talking about in the beginning. Two, I want you to go to YouTube, and I want you to look up a Rein guide, right? Because there are some basic things that I think you're missing that you can just look up literally anywhere and just get fundamental Rein tips, right? I don't need you to kind of spend, you know, 20 hours surfing through YouTube, watching video after video. Just watch a video or two. Come back to me, tell me what you saw, tell me if you think you learned anything from it, or tell me what you think you might be able to do differently. I've already pointed out 2 or 3 big things that you could be changing just between the pins and your positioning. But your positioning, if you're not understanding that you need to play specific corners, then you need to start looking at concrete examples. And I don't have enough time right now, unfortunately, to show you concrete examples because there's just too many maps. So I want you to go start exploring content a little bit on YouTube. You can even go on Twitch and just watch people play if you'd like. There's plenty of content that you could just listen to if you don't have time to actually watch it. But I just need you to start kind of getting that stuff down and start learning the game a little bit more, because you're kind of wandering around as Reinhardt, and it's really detrimental to the team. So those are the 2 pieces of homework that I want you to do before next week. Now, going into today's practice, if you get to see this on Friday, if I upload it in time, or if not, Sunday's practice, what I want you to do is I want you to not talk, because I have been seeing and hearing reports that you are constantly not listening to communications. So I want you to tell everybody that I told you to not talk and just listen, right? You can communicate very basic things, like let's say the fact that you have shatter. or the fact that like you're low. Like, but don't say it a bunch of times. Say it once. Stay quiet. I want you to focus on learning how to listen to your teammates because it is a big hole in your play. Your ability to listen to your teammates needs to be as strong as your ability to communicate with your teammates. So, take some time, do those things, get back to me with how you think it might work, or what you think you can kind of what you need to do going forward. We'll do another review again on Sunday, and then again next Friday, and so on and so forth. And hopefully we'll be able to use these as kind of building blocks going forward.